Hey, Michael, good to see you. First in the chat, you get some kind of prize. I need to think about it. Hey, guys. Hey, Galert, nice to see you again. Fabrizio, good to see that you're in. Your problems got solved. That's great. Hey, Ben. Chris, good to see you guys. Chris, you'll be pleased that I've got my technicals sorted for today. Cool. People are getting in. I've had a few teething issues with authentication in the community, but I think most people are okay. Hey, Daniel, good to see you again. Guys, we'll start up once we hit, say, just over 100 attendees. Today is all about building. Not going to do much theory. We're going to do as much building as we can. So we've got a hand raised. What do I do with that? Someone raised their hand. Do that again so I can figure out what to do with that. I raised my own hand there. Okay, guys, so Neil Carroll. Okay, some people are raising their hand, and I'm not quite sure. Jeff, do you know what raising hands?
I don't know if there. I don't see an action to actually do anything.
Yeah.
Then just maybe someone has would maybe have a question, and maybe for this we'll have that. More so questions come through on the Q&A side.
Cool. Folks, in the toolbar, you'll see the ability to, we have the chat window and we have the Q&A window as well. So use the Q&A if you have a direct question for me. Otherwise, use the chat. Yeah, we've got lots of hands raised, but I'm not actually sure what to do with those. All right, guys, let's get started. So welcome to the Lovable workshop. Okay, today I have Jeff Buzalencia, close friend of mine, my AI confidant. Jeff has taught me a lot about AI, especially in the early days when I was just getting started. So Jeff is here to co-host. Feel free to ask Jeff questions in the Q&A. Jeff will relay those to me. He's going to be just generally helping today. For those of you that have not tried Lovable, Lovable and Bolt, those are the two, I'd say, leading AI builders. Okay. Lovable's history is that they are a Swedish company. They created GP Engineer before AI became really, really big, and then turned GPT Engineer. They turned that into Lovable. They're the fastest growing European startup, I think, of all time. Pretty cool, a lot of fun, quite powerful what you can do. So we're going to get stuck in. Right, let me share my screen. All right, guys, and I suspect that most of you have probably tinkered with Lovable. You'll be quite familiar with Lovable and Bolt, sort of how you start a project, okay? Now, before we start anything, I was just working on this little application this morning. I just wanted to show you some of the functionality that I managed to get up and running, to be honest, in probably 20 prompts, all right? Managed to do this in under an hour. I've been tinkering ever since, but let's just see what Lovable managed to build me in under an hour. So I think the very first prompt was just, I want to create the ability to chat with PDFs, create me a landing page. We're going to go through this in a second. So let me sign in. Authentication is handled by Supabase that's currently connected. Just going to refresh this because, just one sec, this is the older UI. Let me just go to profile. Let me go back to the dashboard. still showing the older UI. There is a bug with this project. I had it working a second ago, but it doesn't seem to be working anymore. Let me just refresh this. Oh, come on. Sign in again. Yeah, just before I clicked. No, this is the wrong version. That's all right. That's all right. I'm sure spinning up a sandbox. Let's just have a look. Aha, here we go. Yep, just a little bit of a bug. But yeah, so this is what I've been working on, okay? This is the dashboard, protected. As a user, my chats are protected within this dashboard. I uploaded basically a fiscal report from Apple. It's called a Apple 10K PDF. And I can ask questions to it. So were there any legal problems in the fiscal year? Chatting to OpenAI GPT 4.0. And there we go. There were some legal problems. Let's ask sort of a more in-depth question here. Or slightly more sort of complicated, I'd say. You paste that in. So what role does Apple's services segment offer in offsetting decline in hardware sales? Whatever that means. Okay, well, there's the answer there, guys. So yeah, live chatting, saving data to Supabase, interacting with OpenAI. Okay, so we're going to get building very soon. I'm going to go back to my dashboard, but let's just have a quick look at the technology side of things, okay? So all we can see is Lovable at this stage. Lovable is our builder. So this is where we're starting. But what we are going to do is configure Supabase. And Supabase is a beautiful database. It also handles authentication. It handles storage for PDF, images, files, and it has edge functions, which is basically a way to run logic in the cloud. You could even build a full backend service with edge functions. Then we've also got OpenAI. Okay, and OpenAI is what we were chatting with directly. So let's try this. Now, I've been watching some YouTube tutorials and videos and Lovable and Bolt, and there are many opinions about how to basically start a prompt. Some people, they like to start a project. Some people like to start super small. Just create me a blank slate project and then build incrementally from there. Some people like to use what's known as the one-shot approach, which is put in all the information like a product requirement document. Let's see where we get. And there's no right or wrong approach for this, honestly. The one I did was sort of in the middle. I added a bit of detail, but not too much. So let's try something. Let's add a few lines here. I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to speak this. I want to create a chat with PDF application. Let's just start with the landing page and we'll build from there. Okay, so what it's doing is generating some code. We are in the preview mode, obviously nothing to look at. But if I had to move across to developer mode, I can have a look at what it's doing and what it's planning on doing. So if I scroll to the top, it's creating these various components. And we are using React, and we're using a framework called Vite. And how React works is everything is component-based. So you build a navbar component, then you add it to the page. You build a footer component, you add it to the page. Hero, CTA, etc. So I can see that these are all, aside from the Tailwind and the CSS, these are just all components. A few config files. Now, guys, this isn't actually important. You know, I have a feeling that Lovable will want to move to this trying to meet developers in the middle. So you can actually edit this code if you connect it to GitHub. But in the class today, I think we're just going to keep it really simple, okay? So let's have a look. So Lovable says, for the first version, I'm going to build a hero section, product showcase, etc., and that's all fine. Now, what I'm going to do in the background is in the top right-hand corner. Actually, before I do that, do we have any questions, Jeff? Anything interesting?
Nothing specific. I think one of the questions from Stuart was, as a newbie to app generators, how worried do you need to be about security of the code being
Yeah.
in Lovable?
Yeah, I mean, look, if anyone's been on X recently, there's been a lot of discussion around vibe coding and inexperienced people trying to build. Now, Lovable is generating the code here, okay? So we're pretty safe. There are some security considerations. Lovable actually handles it quite well. And we're going to actually have a look at that because I'm going to have to enter in my API key for OpenAI. And I want to show you where that is stored. But there are some considerations. And what I'm actually going to build today is I'm going to actually leave security slightly. I'm going to be doing what's called some client-side PDF extraction, meaning that I'm doing it in a person's browser just because of the length of the class. But when we get there, I'll talk about it. Stuart, I would say that's not something you have to be overly concerned about. I think we're going to see these, you can see the generation just happened. I think you're going to see these tools like Lovable and Bolt taking more responsibility for security, making sure that people kind of understand the security aspect. But when you're interfacing with Supabase, that's where your data is stored. That's where your authenticated users are stored. That's where your documents are stored. Supabase is very secure. It uses row-level security, and Lovable understands how to work with row-level security. That's not to say that you're off the hook. It is always your responsibility for security of your own app. And we will actually, maybe we should plan to do a workshop around security because it's definitely worth looking at. Okay, cool. Let's crack on. So here we go. Chat with your PDFs like never before. Like it, like the color scheme. Very sort of Apple. Got a bit of pretend UI here. And you know, this, how cool is this? This sort of little scroll animation. Very cool. What does it look like responsively though? Pretty good. Yeah, I like it. Footer perfectly collapsed. Very nice. Menu bar. Great. Pretty happy with that. Now, I'm going to go, let's just see what Lovable recommends for the next step, right? Because if I look at pages, we only have the index page. That's what I asked for. I didn't want it to go ahead because actually I wanted to do PDF processing in a very particular way. So I didn't want it to do too much. Right, what's next? So tweak the design, expand backend, cool. Let's just have a little look at some of the tools down here available to us. We have an edit tool. Okay, so if I click the edit tool, I can basically hover over text and change what I'd like. So I could make the font size slightly smaller, slightly larger. Let's make it slightly larger, save that. We could do things like ask Lovable to please change the brand color. Obviously, it's this sort of apple blue. Why don't we say that I'd like to update the color scheme to follow the Tailwind slate palette. Let's see what happens. And I asked this in the chat because I wanted to make a global change, right? I wanted to make a global change. So if I go to the code, I'll just show you what's happening. It's not going to let me do it right now. Oh, it shows you here, basically. It is editing, a second ago, it was editing the CSS file. And this is where your global colors typography, your classes basically are stored. So if you, and tracked basically. So when you want to make changes to say button styles or typography, this is where those changes would be made. And you can't at the moment edit this code directly, but I feel like that's coming. Okay, good stuff. I'm going to make one more tweak. Please use a darker primary color in the 800 or 900 range. I know that we're using Tailwind in this project, which is why I'm specifically asking for 800 or 900, which is a darker tone. If you didn't know about Tailwind, that doesn't matter. You would just say, I want a darker primary color. So Frank asks, would the Supabase database structure also be generated in Lovable, or is that done manually? Great question, Frank. Lovable will create the schema for us. So Lovable, we can be specific, but I think I want to do more vibe coding. I want to see how far we can get without any particular database knowledge. So that's actually what I'm going to do next. I'm going to sort out authentication, and then based on the functionality I need, I'm going to say to Lovable, let's connect to Supabase. Please create the tables for me. Okay, let's crack on. So I can see that, yeah, it's a bit darker. I like that. So pretty easy to make a change. We can also do things like, if we didn't like these little badges on the screen, which I do like, but we could click on the badge, highlight it, and actually just delete it. Gone. I actually did like the badge, so I'm just going to discard that change. Okay, good. So it's at this stage where I'm going to connect Supabase. Now, obviously, you need a Supabase account. That is pretty straightforward, and Lovable can walk you through some of the setup. Now, I'm already set up with Lovable organization down here. I have some projects. I'm going to go ahead and say create new project. Now, let's just see. What is the name of this? So, chat with PDF landing. Chat with PDF. The project name can change later. Most projects start out just as an idea, and the brand name will come much later on, so that's absolutely fine. You can ignore the compute size. The default is fine when you get started. Don't have to worry about all of that. Database password is something you will need to set yourself. That password can be reset later, so that's also not a problem. I've just let it generate a password for me. Now, in terms of the region, this is a little demo app. I don't care about the region. But if you are a US-based company, or you think that most of your customers will be US-based or Canadian or Western Europe-based, just select those particular data centers, okay? So I could, for instance, just set East Coast, North Virginia, because I know with BuildCamp, most of my customers are American, and I like, I want to be in an American region. So I'm going to go ahead and create that project. Now, much like Lovable, it takes a bit of time to spin up a project in Supabase as well. So this will take about, I don't know, about a minute. But while it's doing that, let's just sort of have a dig around. So I'm currently in the setup phase. If I go to project settings, this is my name that I can change. But the reason why I can change the name is because of the project ID. You cannot change the project ID. That is set forever. Okay. This is also where I would delete the project, which I'm going to do after this class, or I can transfer it to someone else. Now, guys, there is a lot here. It almost looks kind of overwhelming with all of the options that we have. And today, we're going to be working in the table editor, which is basically like looking at an Excel spreadsheet. We're going to be looking at the database that will give us a really nice graphic overview of our various tables and how they connect together. We'll be looking at authentication. The authentication view is a dedicated table for authentication. And what I mean by that is it's separated out from your regular tables. Your regular tables is where you store chat messages, profile information, bookings, listings, that kind of thing. But this is dedicated, and we're going to be using Supabase authentication, so we will be populating this with live data shortly. We have a storage area. So storage is where we store our files. Very, very simple. And we're going to be looking at edge functions because edge functions are super, super powerful. And that's basically going to be how we communicate between Supabase and OpenAI. All right, let's see if this is finished. Project status, still going. That's fine. Let's go back to, okay, now chat with PDF. Let's connect. All right, so I'm going to click the connect button, and I suspect that Lovable will recognize that we've connected it and perhaps prompt us for the next stage of this project. Here we go. Yeah, it's doing it. So your app is connected. Why don't we do authentication next? Okay, so if I flick across to FigJam, let's work on how we go from here to, sorry, let's do this guy, connector. Just going to do this for now, and then we'll move on to the next phase. All right, so let's add the next prompt. Let's work on authentication with Supabase, which is now connected. Please create the relevant auth pages. And I didn't even ask about the functionality because Lovable's smart. It knows that we've got Supabase. We want to build authentication pages, so it'll do the rest. I also love that now that we've connected Supabase, it's added a link here directly to our dashboard. There it is there, in the dashboard. Really, really like that. It's also got some integration docs. If you wanted to read that, I think you should. I tend to read the documentation while things are busy spinning up. All right, let's have some look at some questions. Chaz says, would love thoughts on row-level security database errors when dealing with Gen AI coding. Okay, is this, Chaz, I wonder if this is a sort of general question. So last week, I did a workshop on coding with Windsurf, which is a coding editor. And the first thing I did was I launched a project using a template. Now, what are templates? And by the way, you can create an app as a starting template in Lovable, which is what I tend to do as well. Create a baseline template with a few things connected and then get going. I don't think you can do that when Supabase is connected, but at least you can get the framework up and running. But this is important. So the general term is token economy. How do you make sure that you are not spending too many tokens on debugging errors, that kind of thing? There is a process. I would say if you are working outside of Lovable in a coding IDE, you'd start with a template because a template really helps you get set up with all the technical bits. Template will come shipped. For instance, the Vercel marketplace is a one-button deploy to Vercel with an attached Supabase with your GitHub attached. Now, if you had to start a Next.js project in an IDE, that might take you a full day to get up and running until all of the errors are resolved, everything is talking to each other. So Chaz, that might not answer your question in working within Lovable, but today I'm going to show you my process for troubleshooting because we will need to troubleshoot, okay? And we just need to be cognizant of how long is troubleshooting going on for? Are we making progress or not? Because if we're not making progress after 3, 4, 5 prompts, maybe we should roll back, ask the prompt, ask Lovable in a slightly different way, or change the approach. There's always a way forward. Often that way forward is one step back. We'll also be looking at logs, etc. Okay, let's go back. Let's see how we're getting on. So an auth page has been set up. Perfect. Let's have a look. All right, here we go. Beautiful. So we just sort of chatted for a while, and then Lovable built me some stuff. Let's sign up. Before we go any further, I'm just going to do one thing here. We're in Supabase. Before I continue, I've gone to the authentication tab, and I'm going to click on sign in, sign up. Because actually, we have all of these authentication providers available to us. All right, so we have sign in with Google down here. We can enable that. Of course, there's a bit of work to do with Google to make sure that we have access to allow our users to log in with their accounts. But I have email enabled, and I'm just going to disable confirm email just for testing purposes, and I can turn that on whenever I like. Just saves me a few steps. I don't have to confirm emails when I'm testing because I'll be testing with multiple accounts. And I need to remember to turn that back on later. I'd refresh the page, that's fine. Looks like it's done some more work here. Or has it? No. All right, let's try this again. So what I'm hoping is that it takes, I can look in Supabase, and in the authentication tab, I can see myself. Okay, that was really quick. Let's jump into Supabase. Authentication. Cool, and there I am. So here is basically your Excel spreadsheet. This is a record in the database, and I can click on that particular record, and here is my information. So when you're dealing with customers, you can find a customer by searching for their email or their UID, which we're not going to deal with. And you can send them a password recovery email. You can send them a magic link if they're struggling to log in. You can do all sorts of things. You can ban them. You can delete them. You have really full control over what's going on here. Okay. So there I am. Fantastic. Let's go back to Lovable. So we're getting a bit further. I can see in the top right-hand corner, cool, I have some stuff, great. Right, let's move on to some functionality. So I'm going to use voice here again. Please build me my dashboard where I can chat with OpenAI. I need messages persisted. I need to be able to save those messages and retrieve the messages from the database.
There was a quick question on what are you using to speak and transcribe in this?
Yeah, it's called Super Whisper. It's, I would say, the most accurate voice-to-text app I've used, Super Whisper. So yeah, have a go, download, see how it works. It's lovely. All right, guys, so it's going to build the dashboard page. Okay, so the question about the Supabase schema, here it is. Looks daunting. It's actually not. Let's dig into it a little bit. So in green are messages. These are SQL queries that basically I just click a button and these tables are going to be created. So create a table for conversations. Beautiful. Create a tables for message within conversations. Fine. We have some row level security. We'll talk about that later. Yeah, all right. I'm going to apply changes. It's actually not how I would have set up the database, but hey, let's see how far we get. Okay, so that's set up. So what's happened now? What has happened? Before I click Add API Key, which I'll do in a second, I'm just going to go back to the database, and I'm going to click on Table Editor. Here we go. Okay, sorry, I misunderstood. Yes, this is how it sets it up. So we have conversations, and we have messages. Multiple messages are linked to one conversation, obviously. So this is how we could later on click a conversation to get a list of messages. So that schema does work. If I click across the database, this is where I tend to hang out a lot because, look at this, we can see the relationship well, at a bird's eye view, we can see our two tables. There they are there. And I can see that an authenticated user is linked to a conversation. And we have messages linked to a conversation as well. Sorry, a conversation is linked to a user and a message is linked to a conversation. Fantastic. Right, let's just see if we can actually, we need to do the API key next. Let me go ahead and get the key. All right, so enter your key, manage this later from the Superbase menu. Interesting. So there it's there. And a prompt has been auto-generated. I've added the keys. Okay, so now Lovable says it's going to build the UI for the chat interface and persist messages. Great. So while that is happening, where is this key? If we go across to edge functions, okay, edge functions, there's an option here under functions called secrets. And here is my OpenAI key. And this key has to belong here. This key is, we're on the back end of our application now. This key cannot be client-side in the code because that's very easy to get to. Let's come back here. Because here is an edge function. And it's an edge function that communicates with GPT-4o, OpenAI. And then as part of this edge function, that would also save the response to a chat message. And I'm going to change chat message because it's called conversation. It's really interesting to see how Lovable tries, the variability is interesting. Different schema every time I've tried this, different UI. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Okay. So an edge function is what talks to GPT-4o. And that is basically similar to like a backend workflow. And that runs on the server side. So regardless of what the user is doing, once the user makes the request from here to the edge function, this just runs until it's done. And then it saves the data back to the database. All right, so Lovable has built a complete chat dashboard where we can have conversations with OpenAI. Okay, so I'm logged in. I'm going to go to dashboard. Cool. So far, no debugging. Debugging is coming because now we're going to do some more complicated stuff. Let's just see how we get on here. All right, I'm going to create a new conversation. I can see my toast, new conversation created. And I'm going to say, hey, which GPT model am I talking to? Something went wrong. Okay. So yeah, this is what I suspected. This is where we start the debugging process. All right. So this is basically my process. When something goes wrong, we go over to Lovable and we say the following. Please check the logs for errors. And I'm going to show you where these logs are. I'm just going to sort of get that going. If I right click on the page and go to inspect, then I go up to the browser, the console. And I'm just going to make this easier to read. Lovable is looking for these ones in red. Okay, so error in chat sequence. If I come over to the left-hand side, Lovable says it'll check the logs and I can see that there has been a problem. Yeah, it's basically expanded some of this information here, so it's got more information about it. So this is what it's doing next, and this is basically the process. You will run into roadblocks. You'll say, check the logs, it will pull the information, and then you continue. And it also has the ability to check Superbase logs as well. Okay, let's try that again. Sometimes you would need to delete a conversation and restart. Okay, well, deletion worked. That's good. So we're on to some CRUD functionality, create, read, update, delete. Let's try another conversation. Hey, how are you today? Okay, slightly different error this time. That's fine. We will push it through the same loop. Check the errors in the logs and find a fix. I actually know what the problem is. I was hoping that it would deploy an edge function. We can't talk to OpenAI without that. So we do have an edge function. Interesting. Let's just have a look at that very quickly. Okay, all good. I'm going to close this. We'll just keep cracking on until it works.
One question that a couple of people asked around was around prompt strategy and like being able to. Do you have any thoughts around how to keep limits or try to limit the prompts you do? How do you think about like the type of tasks you ask Lovable to do in the prompts and to kind of manage that and not go too crazy?
Yeah, that's a great question. You want the AI model to do as little work as possible to find the best solution. And this is where managing your component size comes into play. And actually, Lovable is quite good here. Whenever a component, which is basically a file, a TSX React file, when that gets too big, then Lovable will say, hey, this component is getting quite large. Let's break it into smaller chunks. Let me actually just demonstrate this quickly. And you can ask for this yourself, but Lovable's pretty good at this. So if I go to, let's find a component. Let's say the chat component will probably be quite big. Yeah, so this code here is 233 lines. When it approaches around about 300, Lovable then might say, please, let's chunk this up into smaller size components. And there's multiple reasons for that. One of them is separated areas of concern. It's easier to troubleshoot with a smaller file and to identify where a problem is if things are broken up into smaller parts. But also, it's because the model will want to iterate over the whole file to find where the problem is every time. So if we can chunk our app into smaller parts, then the AI model will have a much easier time finding the problem and determining what the problem is. Mostly about determining what the problem is, because I think finding it is quite straightforward. But you want smaller files, okay? So that's one of the strategies. When I first started out coding, what I'd often do is copy and paste 1,000 lines of code to say, follow what I did here, it works, paste it in. That also becomes problematic because it's about input tokens and output tokens. So if you're asking it to do more work, to read more tokens, obviously that's it's going to cost you more as well. Let's just see what it says here. So the error was fixed by properly handling the authentication token when calling the edge function. Okay, let's try again. I repeat, how are you today? We should get this working soon because this part is not too difficult to get a response. Let's have another look. So look at the console quickly. Now we're getting a 500. Take a step back because we're getting multiple errors with our functionality. Maybe you can suggest a slightly different approach to making our chat work. And I also want to just have a look to see if, where are we, table editor. Okay, looks like we're saving some data, folks. But yeah, I can see that it's slightly not quite. Oh, okay, we did get it under the content. Fantastic. We're going to get onto the file side soon, but I did want to make sure that at the very least, we have the edge function and gpc forward talking to each other. We really need to get that part solved before we start introducing complexity, which is with the files. But we're getting a feeling of how we build in Lovable, okay? All right, so it's made some changes. It said that it simplified the call response. If you see this particular screen where it's set with a button try to fix, I believe that these are free. So instead of saying check the logs, I would probably choose this option because it's a free option, although I don't see a lot of information in here. While this is, sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so while this is happening, there's so many approaches. I wanted to keep this as simple as possible. But there is Lovable, obviously you can see public projects. So you can go to public, open up someone else's project, look at how they have implemented what we're trying to do, and basically remix the project. Use that as a starting point. Lovable will say, please enter in your own open AI keys, and then you continue from there. So you don't always have to start with a blank project. You can sometimes start with someone else's project, remix something that works, but you would have to, that wouldn't work very well with Supabase. You would have to reconnect Supabase and then set up your schemas again. But there are multiple ways around this, okay? That's one of them. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say that there was questions around like, do fixes cost tokens or cost requests? And I think it's, to my understanding, is that when there's a button that says fix, that's not, but in the chat, if you're asking in the chat, that would be a request that's going through.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay, let's try this again. What I'm going to do is start a new chat. Tell me what you know about Totnes town in England. Still failing. All right. Please check the logs and propose a fix. I still cannot chat with OpenAI. Yeah, this is actually quite unusual. We should be up and running by now. So we have multiple conversations. Right, let me go to the edge functions. Okay, so I'm actually going to go into this edge function. I'm going to look at the logs. Don't worry about this at the moment, but the logs tend to give more information about what the problem is. You can see one here. Now, Lovable does have access to this, but this is where I spend a lot of my time if I'm sort of coding in a code editor. I tend to come here, copy the message, and then paste it back in. So we have a type error here. That's annoying. That's a very, very basic one. But let's see what the fix is. Okay, yeah, you can see. So we're just looking at that. We're just looking at the edge function logs, and it's actually picked it up what it was. This makes me nervous. Okay. All right, let's try again. How are you today? Talk to me. All right, guys, we are up and running. Tell me specifically about the history of Totnes. So this is the town I've moved to recently, and it's kind of like a hippie town in Devon. 2 hours from the train, 2 hours on the train from London. There you go, guys. We can actually format this to be a lot nicer. This is Markdown, but we're up and running. Right, we're going to move on to documents now. First thing I'm going to say before we do that, though, is I think we can do a better job on the design. The chat interface message bubbles are not quite aligned. So let's fix that up before we move on. All right, so I'm going to go back to Supabase. And this is what you need to get into the habit of doing, not just living in Lovable. You want to go back, you want to check the tables, you want to make sure that things look good. I can see we have a role, which is a user and an assistant. Brilliant. We have conversations. Okay. Let's now implement, after this little design change, some PDF uploads.
There were some general questions, and I think it relates to kind of what you're doing now around what are some of your recommendations of how you do make some of these changes or the options versus prompting versus code editing versus visual editing or other options within Lovable?
Yeah. So I do like this feature. So visual edit. Let's just see if I can get to this div. You can take a multi-pronged approach. So visual edits don't cost tokens. So use visual edits. Okay, so let's make this div. I wonder if we can, no, we can't style that particular one, but if you can make visual changes, do them, okay? Definitely do that. Let me just see if I can get these pushed to the edges. I need you to span conversations. No. Please span the message bubbles edge to edge in the chat interface. So the model message starts on the left and the user message starts on the far right side. But there is a process. You've seen how I've just sort of chipped away at errors in the logs, and it's sort of eventually worked it out. There's a lot of sort of variabilities, but the best thing is the logs, because the logs is the single source of truth. It's gone evening. Cool. Let's log me out. Let's log back in. It's all good. Let's go to dashboard. But yeah, I recently, okay, that worked out. I recently had a problem that I couldn't fix in Lovable. Now, I promised myself that it wasn't going to get too complicated, but some of people in the crowd, if I just sort of dig around the crowd, some of you are quite technical. So we have Supabase in the top right-hand corner of the Lovable interface. We also have GitHub. Okay, GitHub is how professionals work. It's version control, it's code repositories. That's where all the code lives. Now, if I really got stuck in Lovable, I wanted to feed this to maybe the latest OpenAI model or a different Claude model, then I would actually connect it to GitHub, which gives me access to the source code, and then I'd feed that source code to a different model. You can do it through ChatGPT. I tend to use a program called Claude Code, which is a terminal program. It's incredible. It's never not been able to solve one of my problems. Then I would save it back to GitHub. And when you make any changes to GitHub, when it's connected to Lovable, it's automatically applied within the interface. Okay, so connecting to GitHub is a good idea. You can also do version control and various things. But look, it can't build everything the way you want it to. And part of the process of being an AI developer, which I call a product engineer, is to be cognizant of the process, make sure we follow the process. Sometimes things will just not work that day. So I would either roll back or I'll instruct it to delete, or earlier on, I just started a new project and it worked the second time when I started a new project. What you don't want is to continually chip away or try chip away at a problem where your code base starts to get bigger and more convoluted. If you can't solve it in 4 or 5 prompts, and I think it took me about 5 prompts to get OpenAI connected earlier, I was about to start again very quickly with sort of a bigger prompt. But if you can't do it, start again or roll back slightly. All right, guys, let's crack on. Let's now do this next one. I'd like to implement a way to upload PDF files, store the PDF files in Supabase, and then chat with those PDF files in the current interface. Now, I'm asking it to do a lot here. Supabase. Let's see where we get with this. All right, so it says if you want to implement PDFs, well, we need to save them somewhere, okay? So we need to create a storage bucket in Supabase. Perfect. It's going to create row-level security, which is a policy that protects your data based on who created the data. So in Supabase, your users have access to their own data, or maybe they have access to their team's data. But this is called row-level security, and it's very, very secure, and it's kind of simple to understand. And that's why Lovable is really good with these implementations. So we don't really need to read too much of this. I'm going to hit apply changes. All right, it's executed it. Now it needs to, so it's creating a new TS file. This is basically a logic-based file in React. This is looking good. It's using GPT-4o Mini to interact with the PDF. The tricky part is going to be text extraction. I'm interested to see how it approaches text extraction, if it's going to be client-side or server-side. All right, let's go back. I'm just going to refresh. So it's created a new table. Let's go to the database view, see how this all works together. So we have a PDF document that is linked to conversation. We can see the user that uploaded the document. That's important. There might be private documents. File name, file path, title, processed would be a yes or a no. Now what we don't have is the extracted content. I'll approach that in a second. And here is our bucket. Okay, a bucket is just a collection of like documents. So a bucket could be avatars for users or Airbnb listing images, that kind of thing. But what I'd like to get to is uploading this. All right, so top right-hand corner is an upload. Now, it didn't tell me, let's just see, upload files directly from the chat interface, view a list of files, select a PDF. All right, so the UX might not be how I want it, but I just want to get a file into Supabase storage. I'm uploading a fiscal report. Oh, I can even rename it. Didn't ask for that. Okay, pretty cool UX here on the right-hand side. Let's go over to Supabase and just double check everything here. Here's the PDF. Brilliant, there it is there. Making progress. So, did it persist? Yes, it did. And when I click on it, I can see that at the bottom it says, ask a question about this PDF. Tell me about the revenue in 2023 for Apple. Now, this is not, I don't think this is going to work because I think there's more functions to create here. No, it's not. It's not looking at the actual document itself. Let's speak to Lovable here. We need to adapt the chat interface so it chats with a document only, an uploaded document. You can see that it bypassed the actual report and it just, yeah, we're just chatting to GPT-4o. Let me just jump into Superbase because I want to see if we have a record in a PDF document, which we do. Here it is here. That's the file name. I changed the title. I added report to it. We've got the path to the storage. And it says processed false. Okay, so we're clearly missing. And to keep this simple, all I'm going to do is extract this text and save it to a new column. A column is how we name these. Well, it's a column basically, an input here. So I'm going to create a text column and then see if we can extract that PDF. So it says, I see that you want to adapt the chat interface, chatting with documents, let's modify the code. All right, so what I'm thinking it's going to do is run pdf.js, which is a processing package to be able to read or extract text from PDFs and save them to a database. Let me go back there. All right, well, it says it's done it. Let's try it. Okay, let me just refresh this. And I'm going to click on that report. And I'm going to say, try this again. Oh, actually, based on the Apple 10K report document, extract the revenue from 2023. All right, so yeah, it can't actually do it. And I know that the reason is it's not extracting or processing that PDF document. When PDFs are uploaded, we need to extract the content and save it to Superbase. We need a new column called content where that extracted text is saved to. All right, guys, so we're nearing the end, but this is kind of the last hurdle, okay? I just need a way for it to be able to extract that text. Jeff, anything interesting in the live Q&A?
I think there's some questions up front. I think in terms of towards the end here, which is like how do you think about Lovable versus other tools like Tempo Labs or Replit or V0 and other kind of chat based apps.
Let's see if my problems can be solved, and then I'm going to answer those questions. So I'm going to click Apply Changes. I can see that it wants to update the schema. Perfect. And then after that, it'll just continue running. Okay, lots in the landscape. Why Lovable? I like the process of building Lovable. I think it's quite quick. They had a head start with GPT Engineer. For design, I like VO. I think VO is incredible for design. I find it quite slow to work with, and I think it's because of the way they've engineered it to be very sensible around design and making sure that things stay on course. Now, VO is getting more powerful. VO is turning to Lovable. Lovable is adopting some VO hints, and Bolt is amazing as well, and Bolt can do mobile apps. So guys, if you don't know, Build Camp is running 2 beginner camps, 2 beginner boot camps next month. One will be building over both of them build over 4 weeks, 8 sessions, where we'll work alongside each other to build full stack apps, far more detailed than the current one that we did in just basically an hour. But we'll be using Lovable for web, Bolt for mobile. There are other players in the market. There's Tempo Labs. Tempo Labs is if Figma and Lovable had a baby. Designers are going to love it because there's a lot of interaction. Replit, I've never used. Don't know why. I guess I subscribe to too many tools. But my choice, if you're getting into coding with AI, would be Lovable and Bolt. At the moment, we'll see how it plays out. And guys, I'm just going to see if I can quickly get this up and running. Let's try this again. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new conversation. and upload this PDF. Just because some structure might have changed, well, some structure did change, so we have to start again. Let's quickly have a look. Okay, a new row's been created. Good. There is there. Tell me about any significant legal cases that Apple faced based on the attached PDF report. We're out of time, guys. We're out of time. Almost got there, okay? But from here, if I inspect the logs in the console, oh, interesting. Okay, no return logs. So what I'll probably do from here is go over to my edge functions. Here they are. I've got 2 edge functions. I'm clicking on the PDF logs. It received it. Interesting. Okay. But we are out of time, folks. I wish we had a bit more time to continue with this, but that was fun. We got 90% of the way there. That is a good overview of Lovable. We can build, much more interesting things. I like the connection between the database, authentication, files, and OpenAI. But guys, if you're interested in joining the boot camps, which start in about 3 weeks' time, let me know. Send me a DM in the community or drop a comment below the workshop, in the workshop thread. Okay, hope to see all you guys there soon. Hope you enjoyed it. And next week, we are going to crack on with another workshop that will be based around design. So we will look at VO, but we'll also look at designing in either Cursor or Windsurf. I'm not decided, but I'll see you guys next week. Thank you very much, Jeff. Chat soon.
Thank you.